Breakfast.
Everybody gets an A. Leave.
Me too. At least we can see the mouse moving. We know they're doing something.
Like running out the door of like having, because I'm not going to be home until after 6 today. So I was like, to my husband, like, can you bring my support stuff to the program too?
Okay, we're ready to go.
We're ready. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. Good morning. I'm Jeffrey Burrows, and welcome to the Economy Recovery Board. I am the chair, and I'd like to welcome you to the March 19th, 2026 meeting. Board members and staff are participating in a hybrid format today. So to help our audience follow along, I'll state each section of the agenda aloud. We are streaming live on our virtual engagement hub, which is accessible through the virtual engagement hub link on the front page of the city website. We also have an option for the public to listen live by phone. For those of you out there with us today, welcome. For today's meeting, we have the option for people to call in and comment live during the meeting. To call in and comment live, use the number 855-925-2801 and meeting code 2131. Your phone will be muted and you will hear the meeting live. At this point, speakers will need to push *3 or *3 to enter the speaker queue. So now if we may start with Amy and just introduce ourselves and come down the line.
Amy Michelson Kelly.
Alexandria Monque Ravenel.
Ann Keller.
Cheryl Lantonsic.
Jessica Thomason.
Scott Adams.
John Ellis.
Eva Michelle Spicer.
Chris Coral.
Assistant City Attorney Carly Gillingham.
And John Philman.
And then we have Katie Cornell virtually as well. Hey, Katie. And then we have, well, Elmo, you'll introduce yourself when you come up. So moving right along, we have the approval of minutes for November 20th, 2025. Do we have, did everybody get a chance to look at them? Are we good to go? Do we have a first and a second?
Were the January minutes?
Oh, yes, sorry, yes, it is the January minutes. I'm looking at the wrong, let me move. That's a different agenda. Yes. Yes, but the January minutes, yes.
January 15th. Yeah.
Yes.
Motion to approve.
Second.
And how does everyone vote? Sorry, yes? Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Great, thanks.
Sorry, because it's a hybrid format, you'll have to do the roll call there.
We have to roll call vote? All right, so we'll start with Amy and go around, thanks.
Aye.
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 Katie? Katie Cornell, aye. All right, moving along. I'm going to just, that's not what I need. Thank you. I've got it here now. So now we're going to go ahead and move into our updates. Is it this one? Is it the same as this?
Yes.
Okay, great. Updates and reports. So we have the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery, CDBG-DR Small Business Support Program, the SBSP updates. So we're going to invite Elma King up, who is our program manager, for an update.
Thank you so much for having me this morning. We have a quick update for you on where we stand after Council took action on January 27th. Can we have the slides, please? Do I have to do it? Oh, okay. Great. Thank you. Okay. Sorry for assuming. Great. So today we're here to give you a quick update on the Small Business Support Program funded by the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Program. So as a recap, City Council approved awards totaling $15.5 million to 4 subrecipients in January 27th, to Mountain BizWorks, Arts AVL, Eagle Market Streets, and Venture Asheville. Staff and subrecipients are working as diligently as possible right now to responsibly finalize program specifics and gather required documentation to stand those programs up. No official date has been announced for application openings at this time, and we anticipate grant programs to be launched and applications for the programs to open this spring or summer. Although applications are not currently open, there are steps that business owners can take now so that they can apply as soon as programs launch. The flyers that you have in front of you are the one-pagers that are also available on AshevilleRecovers.org as a quick reference of what programs, of what small businesses can do. We anticipate returning to PEDE in April with more updates, and we'll also be updating this board with more updates as well. As mentioned, on January 27th, City Council took action to approve the awards amounting to $15.5 million. Staff are working right now as quickly as possible with the subrecipients to responsibly finalize the program specifics, gather required documentation, set up application systems, staff up, and these actions include clearly defining grant eligibility criteria for clarity for small businesses as well as for program administration, outlining operational steps to establish efficient program management and ensure strong oversight, fraud prevention, and compliance through stage application review and monitoring processes. Essentially, we're trying to stand things up right from the start, setting things up such as systems for duplication of benefits reviews, underwriting reviews, everything that goes into being federally compliant when managing programs of this complexity. As mentioned, we do anticipate programs to be stood up and applications to open this spring or summer. Although applications aren't open, as mentioned, business owners can take steps so that they can apply as soon as programs launch. Some of those steps, again, as mentioned in the guide, include collecting financial statements, tax statements, collecting profit and loss statements, proof of business ownership and registration, making sure that they have a unique identifier, a unique entity identifier, UEI number, a CAGE code, and an NAICS code, a NAICS code. Doing those things can allow businesses to swiftly respond as soon as those applications do open. This is just, in closing, a summary of what was discussed here. Again, right now we're focused on finalizing those program rules, completing federal compliance requirements, building our systems, and preparing support teams. That crucial work must happen before applications open. You know, one of the reasons we are here today, too, is that we've heard a little bit of confusion in the community about grant opening timelines. And there's been some instances in which folks have conflated this grant program with some of the other amazing available programs that have already launched. And so just wanted to clarify to the community that these haven't started yet, but that work is being done in the background to get them stood up. We are also engaging business associations directly to make sure that accurate information is available on what's being done right now and what timelines are looking like. And we hope to continue to provide that information to you all and to PEDE as well. At this point, I'm all done with my update, but if you all have any questions, we are here. Please.
I'm just wondering about the timeline and whether the expected time that you have out there will get the people engaged in the program and finished in the timeline that's been given, because obviously that's really critical.
Do you mean the timeline for the full grant?
Yeah, for the whole
Definitely.
process.
Definitely. And in fact, we anticipate things to move extremely swiftly once those applications do open up. And that's part of the reason why we're taking so much time now, so that once people do apply, things can happen really, really fast. All of the forms are set up for the subrecipients to know exactly what they need to have on file for each of the small businesses so that there's no confusion later. So we're standing all of that up now so that it happens really swiftly. In the case of 3 of our subrecipients, we anticipate those programs to go really quickly and for those grants to be issued really rapidly. And in the case of our Venture Asheville partnership, we anticipate that to be done in a staged 3-year process. That remains the case.
They have 3 years to finish, or 3 years from the start of your effort?
They actually have 5 years.
5 years, okay.
But it will happen faster than that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I don't know if this is a question or a comment, but I know, I understand that there are LMI considerations and that the businesses will have to satisfy. And one thing that seems daunting to some business owners, including myself, is how to demonstrate that. And I understand there might be some censuses that businesses may be required to do, or it might be helpful for them to do, I don't know. But that, in the list of items that businesses should prepare, to me, that is like something that, once the application is live, like if people have to then undertake that exercise, it might take a little while. And so might that be something that's included in these items to be completed in advance? And would you all provide a form or something to use as the census if that is required for certain business owners?
That's a very helpful note. And thank you for bringing that up in terms of, I just want to highlight what you're indicating, which is that a critical piece of this program is that jobs must be created with the funds that are being invested in these businesses. And therefore, businesses must demonstrate the ability for job creation when receiving these grants. And part of the process that we're undertaking right now is ensuring that the underwriting that the subrecipients do for these small businesses ensures that those businesses can indeed be viable, can indeed sustain the jobs that are necessary to be able to qualify for this funding. And to your point, we could provide a little bit more information to businesses about how they can be ready in order to respond to that jobs piece. So
I've seen those surveys from other campaigns in other places, because I was curious for myself, like, how will I satisfy this? So yeah, if there is going to be a census or survey, maybe people could start on it
That's helpful.
as soon as possible.
Really helpful feedback. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alma.
Thank
We
you for-
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Just a question, there says that there's a formal vote, but we don't have anything to vote on today, right?
Okay, great. Just wanted to make sure. So we're moving into new business now for the Arts and Entertainment Facility Project. Chris, we're going to hand it over to you.
Good morning. Chris Coral, Community and Regional Entertainment Facilities Director. So today we're asking for feedback on our community and engagement plan related to a potential arts and entertainment facility project. I'm sure there are going to be questions about the general project as well. Like, we can answer a few of those, but we shouldn't get into a whole Q&A about like what the project could be, because we're really talking about the engagement plan, which will help inform what the project would be, if that makes sense. So some key takeaways on what that project could potentially get to. We've identified, along with a private partner, property the city owns known as Parkside. It's right beside City Hall. It's the city parking lot. We'll show a map of it here shortly, as a potential site for a mixed-use development anchored by an arts and entertainment facility. Council's scheduled to vote on Tuesday coming up to hold the land for up to 2 years while we go through the due diligence process with the private partner and the community engagement process with the community. Community engagement plan is being developed to ensure that community concerns and aspirations are incorporated throughout this process, and early community input is going to help shape the right partnerships to work through a request for qualifications for additional partners in the process. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. And securing an additional partner is critical, like basically will not happen without another partner to this project's success. So just a brief history. Community interest in replacing or modernizing the Thomas Wolfe dates back to the 80s. So it's been around for a while that we, Asheville, would like to replace, update, or do something significant with the Thomas Wolfe. Analysis indicates that the level of restoration required for the Thomas Wolfe is really just outside of the ROI for what we would need to have for a successful facility unless we completely change the programming. And for now, we need to make sure we still have a home for the Asheville Symphony, because if we change significantly, they don't have anywhere to go. Post-Helene, the Economic Development Administration put out what's called disaster supplemental grants. These are not the same as CDBG-DR. These are focused specifically on job creation and economic growth in the community, which this project we feel like will qualify for, and that's really what kind of brought this back to the table for us to go after. And then the city-owns Parkside site has actually been considered for mixed-use development off and on, dating back to the 80s. It's had a few different iterations of potential mixed-use development plans, none of which obviously have come together. And right now, that's our target. So as a potential site, this is a map of it. It's about 120 parking spots. It's a few different terrace levels for the topography, just to give you an idea of where it is, sitting in there between Public Works, City Hall, Mount Zion Church. So as we looked at the site, we have current partners being ATG Entertainment, who's a private developer that helps own, operate, manage Broadway houses specifically. And the Asheville Symphony is very interested in being a partner in the project. So between those two groups in the city, we essentially have 3 partners on the project. And the site massing that we did based on the needs of those 3 groups includes a 300-space parking garage, space for a public fire station, 2,500 seat-ish performance hall, rehearsal and education center spaces, and space for workforce development, workshop, and footprint. So we had a volunteer architecture firm out of Nashville put together just a site massing with these 3 entities. These are things we know we need. Will it fit on the site? That's what this was for. This is not preliminary design. This is not what we envision for the site. This is just, will these things fit on the site, just for clarity. So this shows that yes, they will. And really the way, if you look at it at any length of time, you can see that there's additional space on the site, that more can be done. Hence the extra partners that we want to talk about here shortly. So potential space use to add to that site massing. It could be any, all, or something that's not even on this list, right? Retail, gallery space, restaurant, museum, community space, maybe bigger parking. There's so many more things that can happen with that, but that needs to be connected to some other partner, private, nonprofit, whoever that is. So where we are now, we're on the left side, this like bigger arrow. We expect economic impact data to be coming from ATG here in the very, very near future through a group called Sound Diplomacy that's working on the project for us. And next week, council would be requesting a land hold. At that point, hopefully next month, we'll have an application in to the Economic Development Association for a supplemental grant, somewhere up to $5 million. That's the cap on the grant that we're going to apply for. I don't know the exact number that we'll be putting in yet. But the part we're talking about today are the rightmost arrows, comms and engagement to help inform writing and issuing an RFQ to solicit additional partners. So that continuing engagement next steps, what we've already done is we updated information and FAQs that are posted on the project page. We can send that project page out to you guys afterwards if you'd like. Those went up earlier this week. And on that same project page, anybody can sign up if they're interested in the project to get email updates. So you just put your email in and updates will come as they come. And we want to incorporate community feedback to inform a request for qualification for additional partners. So if we just put out an RFQ right now and said, hey, who wants to help us develop this site? We could get anybody and everything, right? So we want to get community feedback of what type of thing is useful at this site so that we can write that RFQ to help steer it in a certain direction. Like, do we want retail in that? Great, like we're gonna say we want retail in this site and that will help get people that develop retail at the site. Does that all make sense? Yep. So our initial phasing plan, spring, summer of 2026, where we are right now, is to work with stakeholder groups specifically. So this is not like a big mass, every single citizen in Asheville, but stakeholders that might be affected by anything that could happen at the site or that would use the facility as it's currently envisioned. And that will help inform an RFQ that we'll issue later this summer for that additional private partner or nonprofit partner to help develop. Phase 2, if we get there, because this project could stop before we even get to phase 2, is going back to the stakeholders with the additional scope from whatever that future partner could be and what that came out of that RFQ, and then start the bigger public input of like the entire community of public meetings, surveys, et cetera, like you've seen with some of the recovery projects that are happening right now. And then throughout the project, just continuation of information sharing and public engagement opportunities. So we have what tried to be a small list and probably needs to be longer of initial stakeholder groups to offer opportunities for one-on-one or small group meetings to talk about like what could be good at this site, what makes sense, what can go in with this mixed-use development that's anchored at with a arts and entertainment facility. So this is our list. This is one of the things we're going to ask for feedback on, and we can come back to this slide when the discussion starts. Who is missing on this list? What groups do we need to make sure get added so that we're reaching out to all the right stakeholder groups at the start? And our objectives. So we want to have those meetings and start with where we are, what we're requesting input on, So kind of a quick update, like we just talked about, like what the project could be, where we're at with it. We are currently asking for information about what you would like to see at this site so that we can inform an RFQ. And we want to identify those concerns and excitements. So what are the top things that these groups love about the site, love about the potential of this project at the site? What do they like? What are their concerns? What are the fears? Like, what are the positive negatives, right? The roses and thorns. And then we're going to use that feedback to create parameters that would get put in that RFQ to create guardrails for that extra developer. Yep. So what we'll do with the input received today, what I just described, and then we get to the requests of the Economy Recovery Board. What stakeholders are missing? What are you hearing from the community? And I think really important that we learned, every project we learn this a little bit more. I learned it really well last week. Where do you get your news? And I attended a community meeting that was full of a lot of misinformation and assumptions. And so where do people get their news so that we can make sure the right information is out there and that they get that information? So with that, I'll open it up for discussion, questions.
I'd just love to get us started here. Chris, thank you so
Come
much
with it.
for that wonderful presentation. And I just want to acknowledge both the excitement and real concerns about this project, which is understandable given its scale and impact. Community members care deeply about how this is done and who it ultimately serves. But I am very encouraged by the intentionality around engagement, because if we get this right, it can strengthen Asheville's economy and arts ecosystem long term. The opportunity here is to make sure that it is not just a process that gathers input, but one that builds alignment and shared ownership moving forward. This can be a major economic driver, which is super exciting, but only if it's built with the people already doing the work, and which is why I'm happy to see some of this highlighted as a part of the process. Because if we bring people in early, this becomes something the community can help build, and it's not being something built around us. And this just transforms this from being another new building to a wonderful economic asset to our community. So I'm happy to see that within this plan that there is a lot of community engagement and involved. And I'd love to open it up and start.
Exactly 300 spaces. We're slightly more than doubling the total parking in that location. Clearly, we're also adding, a reason for more people to come to that location as well. So there's a lot of parking in downtown that's maybe not as easily found as others, but directly down the street here is the College Street Garage, but parking is going to be a major aspect of this for sure.
I have a couple of questions. Can we talk or no? Okay. All right. So, a couple of questions around the vendor that is providing the economic impact study. Do they have an interest in the outcome of their study? Like,
No,
Are
it's
they
Sound
the-
Diplomacy, which is a third party.
okay, so it said like ATG was doing the economic impact study. Was there an RFQ for the selection or RFP for the selection of that firm?
No, so there's not an RFQ for the selection of ATG. There's not required to be an RFQ for that type of, for real estate development, essentially. We did contact multiple different developers. They were the most interested and the only one that were ready to bring cash to the table. There were plenty that were like, if you build it, we'll come run it for you. But this is the group that's ready to help put money towards construction.
Yeah.
And then we did get multiple quotes to select Sound Diplomacy, which is the independent firm that's like the third-party consultant that's putting everything together. It's contracted by ATG. So we have an MOU with ATG. We're sharing expenses in these pre-development discovery. ATG contracted with Sound Diplomacy, so we'll reimburse for our share to ATG. So the report will go from Sound Diplomacy to ATG to city.
So so when I was looking at the timeline, it's like we're in the economic impact part, and then there's going to be community engagement that's kind of spring, summer, but in the meantime, we're going to the EDA. Is that how that works? And so I am a developer and a person who's interested in hospitality and tourism here, so this is obviously a great asset for tourism and things like that. We, I think, are a better tourism destination and better for residents when the asset reflects the place. And so one thing I'm curious about, and I've read about this before actually in other markets, is when you have this profit motive, which this group will have, how can we ensure that this asset continues to be of the place, serving locals and residents as a forum for them, while satisfying that profit motive for ATG? Because I've seen it in other markets where that has failed to be, year 3, now the local community groups can't pay the rent to use it to just, have creative endeavors. So how do we, it's like kind of cart before horse in some ways, because the engagement's after the...
It's not, though.
Okay.
So
All right, that's my question. Sorry, I should ask instead of just saying that.
the definitive agreement is like 2 or 3 or 4 years from now. So this is, ATG, we're agreeing to work together for the next 2 years. We're going to hold this land, which we have not developed in the 45-ish years we've owned it, but we're going to make sure we don't develop it in that 2 years while we work through this process. And hear community needs feedback, and that gets incorporated into that definitive agreement to try to protect things like that. The symphony is the easy example in this because they're at the table already because of just the situation that we're in with the Thomas Wolfe. So they need X number of dates a year to do their performances, and if they're going to help invest in the facility and be here long term, they need to know that in year 5 they're not priced out, right? So part of that investment comes with guarantees that their rent won't go up more than X% per year or something like that.
And the reimbursables and all that kind of stuff
like all
that
the
are,
things that come with it, your staffing costs, your sound and lights, like everything that is associated, right? And so then the same comes with the city. If we're going to invest in this, ATG, we need these certain parameters. So like we know on a staff side what most of those are going to be, but we haven't heard from community yet. What are those specific things that like you and you and you want to make sure that are part of this? And then we figure out how we can work that into that agreement. And if it becomes a deal breaker, then we come back to council and say, hey, like this, and this can't happen if we still want ATG at the table. And that's when we decide if we walk or if we stay, right? So this is that front end of that process to get to that.
Okay.
So it's in the EDA grant, for clarity, we're asking for money to help with like site development. So a discovery at the site, utility relocation, geotech. And what's important to remember is, let's say we get the EDA grant and we do these things, but the Performing Arts Center, art and entertainment facility thing doesn't come together. We still prepped the site for some other future development. So there's a bonus there in that, even if this doesn't come together. And this is, I know some of you in this room have worked through this with me in the past. This has come and gone and come and gone many, many times since the 80s. This is the most realistic it's been, at least in my like 14 years, mainly because of the private partner, but it is very far from a done deal, just for clarity.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? Sorry, Cheryl. So, because this is kind of based on what Amy said. So, and I know that, and I realize this part here is about how do we engage the community, and so, but I'm just curious from a city perspective. We know that it's an economic driver, but I'm just wondering from a city's perspective is like, what do you already, is typically, like I think about like having a mission statement, and it's like, are these things weighted? Like, does the city have this perspective that it needs to be a cultural hub and a community space, or is it mainly the focus is like, it's going to be an economic driver, which again is great. And I work in music. I make 100% of my income from art, right? So it's a big deal for that. But I'm just curious as to, you know, we've put we kept putting the Band-Aid at for so long on Thomas Wolfe that to the point where we let this happen. So that now, you know, hopefully this is the case. But I'm just curious, is the city just wanting to do the engagement to be like, to figure out what that mission statement needs to be for everybody, or are those things already weighted from the city's perspective?
So formally weighted, no, but we've done so much engagement about the Thomas Wolfe over the years. Like, we know that the community wants a Broadway house, but also wants community-focused programming. And in the Thomas Wolfe feedback over the years, it's been really important that community groups have access to program events, but historically, the Symphony is the community group. We have, yourself included, one or two others that'll do maybe one event a year, one every 2 or 3 years, but the size of the room just makes it, we don't have community groups that can scale to 2,000 seats or greater, right? So the important thing here is to remember the education center and rehearsal space. So the Symphony wants to help make sure that that exists. So that's your smaller space rooms that community groups could have access to, and that we can help have a lot of control over, because you can have the commercially viable room that's 2,500 seat, churning through those national touring acts and Broadway shows and whatever else might come through the community, while still having this smaller space available for the local smaller groups. That's, you know, there can be multiple front doors. It is a big property, right? And then inside that, tied to the Economic Development Association grant, is workforce development workshop space. And the hope is to work with a university or a community college to have workforce development specifically in what happens in a performing arts center or a music studio or on a tour, sound, lighting, rigging, carpentry work, all that work, which is surprisingly hard to hire in Asheville and is really good paying jobs. But these are jobs that you can do in Asheville, but you could also go to Charlotte, or you could go on tour and live in Asheville and work on the road half the year and come back. So trying to tie all those together. And so does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah.
All right.
Two questions. One is, because I'm not 20, I don't go back 20 years here in Asheville. So over the years, what has been the barrier that has gotten in the way of this being pushed forward, and what is different about it, or what do you anticipate still being some of the barrier, is one question. And then a comment on the stakeholder groups.
The one word answer is money. But really it has come down to, we had a nonprofit group that was championing it at this site in the early 2000s. They were being successful in their fundraising, and then the Great Recession happened, and that is essentially what killed that project. At the Thomas Wolfe, many times it's been funding. We had enough funding to do like a super basic lipstick type of renovation back in mid-20-teens. And then through community engagement, we heard a lot of, we don't want exactly what's there, we want this. And then trying to get to this money then became the problem. So it's continually been funding. And so having a private partner that can bring like 8 figures to the table up front and a long-term lease to help pay off debt service is why it's realistic this time.
More viable.
Yeah.
And just in terms of stakeholder groups, just thinking about, because it said it would have a fire substation there if the police and fire are
Not police
involved in
and
the
fire,
are involved
potentially
in,
just fire, yeah.
or just fire. But as far as being part of the stakeholder group conversation, if they're included, and then through Explore Asheville, I'm sure that's the representation of the hotel groups in town, but
theory,
wondering if
yes.
they've been engaged at all.
Yeah.
Just in terms of what potential impact on tourism.
Explore Asheville is very interested in getting deep into this project for sure. And for example, like Arts AVL currently is listed there as like a bucket to include like Asheville music professionals and the Wortham Center and ACT. Right. That's how it's listed now, but that doesn't mean that has to be the case, for example.
Chris?
Yeah.
First of all, in full disclosure, I'm a member of the Symphony Board, but I do not have any personal financial stake in this. In terms of the stakeholders, when I read this list, 2 jumped out as not being there. You just mentioned one of them, the Wortham Center and Asheville Community Theater, in the sense that these are organizations that have the same business model as this proposed site, attracting their customers between the hours of 7 and 8 o'clock. I was also thinking about school bus parking, which is also a major issue in this confined area. And so I think these organizations, just because of the the impact that it could have on their business and also how they could benefit from this would be very critical. I know Arts AVL is there, but these organizations understand the logistics that they have to deal with load in, load out. So I would highly recommend that those two organizations be added to the stakeholder list.
But like a local performing arts center group of some sort. I know there's not a formal group of them, but there's
Well, and
two or
those
three
particularly, these are two
organizations.
that are geographically located
Yeah.
so that they're and we also know on nights that these organizations are busy. Parking becomes an issue, finding restaurant reservations. You know, as you experienced at the Civic Center when Wolf was down, the arena actually did better because you weren't competing against each other.
Yep.
So now it's that same situation.
Yeah,
Thank you.
And Kim's here taking notes on all these questions.
I'd just like to add one more organization to that stakeholder group, and that's the North Carolina Stage Company, as well as within the Asheville Community Theater and the Diana Wortham. And I would also just be interested in, when they're in that engagement, what do partnership opportunities look like? Like, they're not just people that have the experience to come in as stakeholders, but again, if we want community and heart to be a part of this project, what does it look like for those organizations to be involved?
Yeah.
And then Katie.
I think this is a good time to mention, ATG has been clear, they run 72-ish venues around the world, and not a single one of them has the exact same operating model as the other. So they are in a flexible space with everywhere that they work, which is a good thing for us.
Chris, may I ask, you're hearing some recommendations, I'm sorry, on organizations to be added to this, but what is the process for that occurring? With our recommendations, what happens to them?
Your recommendations will inform the finalization, so unless you add like 30, if we add like 2 or 3 suggestions, we'll just add them on. But if you say like we need these 30 groups, we'll probably pare that down or try to condense them a little bit.
Thank you.
I want to add a group. I know Katie's waiting. I have a couple of questions, but I just want to add, since we're on the topic of the groups, I want to add the Legacy Neighborhood representative because of the site location.
Okay.
Thanks.
Can do that. Yep.
Can you hear me, everybody? Sort of, kind of. I've been told you can hear me now.
It's very faint.
Very faint. Would it be better if I typed my comment in the chat?
That's a better idea.
Should I type?
No.
May I ask a question while we're working through that?
Maybe start typing it, Katie, just in case. Yeah.
So the Peace Center in Greenville is on 6 acres,
Yes.
and there's no fire station in it. What makes this site big enough? And are we, because having been here since the 80s, born here, this is like an age-old thing. And my first thing is like, well, this will never happen either. We don't really need to be wasting our time with this. Because there is always such a barrier in money or in, oh, we have to put all this stuff to try to get anything done. It's like passing a bill, you slide stuff in to try to get it passed, right? Are we thinking long-term enough about this, since this discussion has been going on for my entire lifetime here? When the Peace Center started getting talked about in the late 70s and was built in the 90s. Is this site really big enough for this? To try to add all this stuff in it?
It is big enough for the parking, fire, and arts and entertainment facility. And as you go up,
But then
you
we're
can
gonna
make it
try to
bigger.
add all this other stuff, and it's like, what? It's not gonna get done.
Potentially, right? Like it has not gotten done many times.
Right.
The Peace Center is on 6 acres, but the Peace Center has multiple theaters and a whole warehouse
But
space.
their
If you look
biggest
at the
theater
main
is 2,000
venue-
seats.
Yeah, but the main venue is on about 1.5 acres. So like,
And it
they
has
have a
beautiful
lot of
parks and it has an
space.
outdoor amphitheater,
Right.
I understand that.
Yeah.
But why do we need a fire station in our performing arts center when there's a fire station right here?
There's a long-term vision to potentially move fire and/or police out of that space, and that vision was this site.
Right.
So trying to find a way, if we're going to use this site, to incorporate at least one or the other of those into it, which is why we did the site massing with it. It doesn't mean that's going to be the
Right.
end game must be, but we have to make sure that we're reserving a footprint for it if it would be the case. And these architects that did this do performing arts centers.
Okay.
So they would have, we had them evaluate multiple, well, we asked them to go find us multiple sites downtown that could work. They found this on their own. And the parameter was that if this was one of the sites, they had to include a fire station with it to make sure that it fit, and we gave them the square footage necessary. So yes, it fits to be able to do your full-scale Broadway shows, your Wickeds, your Lion Kings, whatever, and do. So there's a lot of retail potential there, you know, a lot of like linear footage, sidewalk footage. So there's space to do more and still have the arts facility within. But yeah, it will fill quickly, but it's also it's a big site. Like, it's bigger than it might
Well,
feel.
it's 2 acres.
Yeah, 2.5. Yeah.
And when you compare that to other performing arts centers, that just doesn't seem.
It's bigger
Big.
in footprint than the Tanger Center, for example,
Okay.
which has 3,000 seats in downtown
Okay.
Greensboro. So some are on smaller sites, some are on larger. A lot of it depends
If
on when
this
they're
makes it
built.
happen, like, count me in. What can I do to help? Because I am tired of this conversation.
Heard, me
Let's
too.
get some Broadway here. Let's get some more Billy Strings 4-night sold out shows that bring a lot of business to downtown, because that's my financial gain from this, is bringing more business to downtown. That's why we're here,
Yep.
right? Are we thinking long-term enough about it, is my concern.
Yeah, if we want.
Because we've been talking about it for my entire life, and if my daughter has to sit here and talk about it, like, all done.
Yeah, I mean, if we decide it needs to go bigger, it's going to have to go out of downtown, and that may lose
Or does
our
the
private
fire
parking.
station move to the Taj Mahal Garage, which is already, needs to be, anyway.
Right.
But then we're probably kicking the can another 40 years down the road.
Hopefully not.
It'll be my 80th birthday party there, not my.
May I read Katie's comments? Katie Cornell said, I want to second other performing arts groups being included as stakeholders, but especially the Wortham Center due to their proximity to the site. I also support including the Legacy Neighborhoods Coalition.
Thanks,
I have
Katie.
a comment. I'm glad to see that you're working with the Block Collaborative and those groups, because talk about, trying to build up economy and support the businesses in that area. They're already struggling because of the lack of parking. And we can say, yes, there's a county lot over here and a city lot over here and public parking, but that's in real daily practical life, that's not the case. And so, that whole corridor is sorely lacking in access and amenity. So I just want to make sure that like the groups that are working on designing this, if they're from outside the community, that they really, really understand that.
Yeah, and we're far from having a design team, right? But when that comes, we'll have all this feedback from all these different groups, and I'm sure parking is going to be like number 1 or 2 on that concern list, I would imagine.
Chris, you said that. I was going to ask you what would cause the city to walk away from this project, and you talked about protections for city interest and Asheville Symphony interest. And I'm curious, how do you include the block and the protection for the block in the interest when you're sitting at the table with ATG?
That's the city interest I'm talking about. The symphony, that I was using that as the example. Like,
Okay.
They're protecting their interests, and if there's no's on there, that's the reason for them to step back and walk right. And so our community and public engagement and the feedback we get there creates what the city's walk issues are. Like, there will be lines in the sand that we need to make sure are included. And those are TBD right now, but we know that we're going to need some type of connection to city. Like, the one thing I know we're definitely going to need to make sure is available is dates for high school graduations, right? Like, so there's certain things that are going to have to be in there, but like, what are those other things is what's to come through this next 6-ish months of engagement.
Well, can you give me an example? Because I hear city, but I'm actually talking about the block collaborative specifically, right? And so we say that this land is adjacent to urban renewal. I challenge that because I'm looking at pictures in the archives of YMI of homes that were occupied and owned by Black folks on that property. And so we can say urban renewal, but I want to talk about serial forced displacement, which is why I'm saying legacy neighborhoods need to be involved in this process, because there's a loss there. There's a continuous loss there. And when I think about the magnitude of this project and what it's going to do for the neighborhood, the small neighborhood that now exists because of serial forced displacement, I get worried. And so I want to make it really clear on record that I'm not saying no to a performing arts center. I'm asking us to move with a lot more caution and to include people early on. We were not included early on. The meeting that we had last week, and we could talk about that in a minute, was an opportunity to give people the information that I've received, that most people are not getting. And I think it's really important that we slow down in this process and have legacy neighborhoods, a block collaborative, those folks at the table to talk about like what would make this not a great project. So I want those protections to be in place, and I don't see how with the proposal that those protections going to be there for the neighborhood. One more thing. I'm getting sneers and jeers from people because I'm talking out about this project. I've never said no. I'm just saying make it make sense and bring us in so we could be part of the developing if it's going to happen. And so that's my last comment for now.
So this
Yeah.
is early on. Now is early on. We've been talking to ATG, trying to get to a point that we're like, yeah, we can move forward with something, but until we had a site identified that we knew we could actually like put the thing in, it's not early on because we don't have anything that we can do, right? So we are at early on right now. Like that's what's happening now. And so that's the opportunity for community engagement to exist to help create what those lines in the sand are. So I can't give like a specific example because other than maybe it is parking. Like if somehow we can't afford to do any parking at all at this site, like that's probably a deal breaker, right? And but I can't give like a very specific like block related one because we haven't gotten that information yet. Is that?
I know you have to go. I have one
yeah,
more question,
no.
but go ahead.
Oh, so I was just going to add to what Alexandria was saying and support what you're saying also, and answer the third question before I have to leave about the news. It's confusing to me also because I've actually heard like weird details about this project, and I don't know. It's come through people that I would think would know about it, about like how the money is being used. And so to your point, it does seem like a lot of stuff has happened because I've heard about it, but again, I heard about it through word of mouth, but it's from people that seem like they know. So it seems like a lot of work has been done. So it's great to hear that we're at the beginning, but I understand why you would feel that way because I've also heard all kinds of details about this project. There's going to be visual arts and certain people are getting certain proceeds from the tickets and all this. I've heard all that. So anyway.
None of those are real. Right?
Understood.
Like
Understood. But I understand why you feel this way. So anyway, I have to leave, and thank you all so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris, for acknowledging that.
Okay.
Anytime. Yeah.
So one more thing I want to request is a cultural impact study. And you and I talked about this in the small meeting that we had.
Yep.
And that is, I understand ATG has, 72 different locations
They do.
throughout the United States. So I'm curious about the places where they've gone into neighborhoods and what the impact was on the culture there. So I asked that specifically because we're working on the Boosting the Block project, which is about bringing Black Cultural District alive again. And so I'm just curious how this will impact that. I'm not really that curious, but I want you all to do the study because I can make it all these imaginings in my head about how it's going to diminish the work that we're doing. Yeah, and the identity of the neighborhood.
They run 72 worldwide, not in the States.
Worldwide,
just for record
okay.
clarity.
Thank you. Thank
But
you.
yeah, I've been trying to look for venues that are in markets like inside neighborhoods or right beside neighborhoods, similar to
Yeah.
this, to try to use as case studies. I haven't found a ton of them yet, to be
Okay.
honest. King's Theater in Brooklyn is the only one on the list so far that I've found that is like definitely like in a neighborhood similar, but I have honestly not had a ton of time to start on that, but that will come in all this process to keep going down those case studies.
Will that happen during the negotiations with the ATG or okay.
There's a lot that can happen in the next couple of years. Like
Okay.
before there's any final agreements with ATG in front of council, we're probably like, in a best case, 2 years. Like, but it's probably like 3, 4, or 5, or never.
Okay.
Can you all hear me?
I'm going to echo an earlier comment about including the police department and fire department as stakeholder groups, particularly from the nexus of housing. And I say that because there was a Mountain Express article about 1.5 years ago that basically documented that 85% of the police force lives outside of the city limits. Some of that's probably obviously by choice, but a lot of that is by a factor of affordability. The fire department has also been in the news a lot recently, both with staffing, pay levels, general morale. So looking at this site, I've actually developed a parking garage previously about 10 years ago with the city of Concord in Cabarrus County near Charlotte. And something that they were able to leverage from a 600 space public parking garage was 48 residential units of what's called a liner building or a residential wrap. I was just briefly sketching out this site and kind of doing a quick bit of back of the envelope sketching. And on the Davidson Drive frontage, you could take, give or take 35, 40 feet back from that potentially for a residential wrap. If you were looking at that in the nexus of first responder housing, something like Firehouse Flats might have a ring to it or something like that. So I guess just a quick comment in terms of looking at all the additional possible uses on this site, residential, particularly in relation to the parking garage, of wrapping it so you're not looking at just, either 2-3 stories of parking. To the question of we need more parking or how much parking is there on site, was just looking at the massing diagrams, and I noticed that a good bit of that was subsurface. Generally with parking garages, at least at the time that I was working on this 10 years ago, it was somewhere the multiplier of like $15,000 a space. It's probably closer to $30,000 a space above ground. You'd probably double that to 60, 70 below ground. So to the earlier comment about this being a small site, I mean, it's 2 acres. That's not a small amount of land in a downtown setting, but certainly to your point, you've got the ability for verticality. So I think that would definitely, be a part of the conversation of you want to potentially have a large performing arts center. You need parking for that. The fire department has an interest in having a fire station there. Again, the issue of police and fire, police and fire being able to live in the city. This might be a real opportunity, since it is city-held land, to have some kind of partnership for that. And I'd really be curious to see what the percentage of the fire department is that lives in the city limits compared to that police story. So just a couple of thoughts there. Thank you.
Hello. Just on your question about platforms the city is missing in communications. So just a couple thoughts to highlight. So moving through, we have a lot of really smart, capable, incredible community organizations, neighborhood associations, and so moving and ensuring that we have partner-based communications with community organizations. If there's any way also to create accessibility through social media, so Instagram strategies with short-form, visual, story-driven updates that can be really quick. In-person engagement, there's a lot of incredible events that happen throughout the city. Can the city have pop-up tents just to have quick engagements with a quick flyer or a QR code? And then there's also ambassador models, so people who are trusted community voices that can help share out information.
And hopefully, as we go through, we can keep this group more and more up to date. And 11 ambassadors here.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's a good way to start, but we can continue to.
Any other questions?
Not a question, but just a comment that I want to make. And I think, and I've been thinking about what Alexandria said, and just in terms of your question of what are you hearing from the community, I think that there definitely is this perceived notion with working with the city that things get done without input, right? Or input is taken and not necessarily implemented in certain ways. I mean, I've certainly had my experiences working with on the noise ordinance, for instance. We were in discussions about what that could look like, and then the pandemic happened, and we stopped those communications and that engagement, and then it was just here's a new noise ordinance, and then we were like, whoa, wait a minute, what happened, And so I think that's one of the things that I think is really important, is just to say that there's transparency with the conversations that are happening, that we are inviting enough people, and then also that there are some accountability in some things that are being, like Alexandria was talking about, is not just a lip service, but actually seeing that these things are taken into consideration. And that was part of why my first question was what's the mission statement of this? Is it we know it's an economic driver and it's amazing, but what are, for that, you know, for performing arts, but what are the other things and how are those going to be weighted compared to, like, if the community says these are the things that are important for us and that we want to make sure that are recognized, how are we going to make sure that those things continue to be recognized?
Yeah, from the little bits of conversation with our current elected officials, like, they're all very cognizant of that, and they don't want something that's just this building that gets built and all the money comes somewhere, goes in and leaves Asheville, right? They want something that's for community and helps support community. So that's, I'm sure, where we'll get if we get there.
I was gonna say yes, Katie.
Katie? Okay.
Okay, Katie Cornell has commented. We want to acknowledge that Arts AVL has conducted some public engagement as part of the Buncombe County Arts Recovery Plan, which will be released in June. This process included focus groups specific to this effort, where we explain potential community uses for this type of space. To clarify, these conversations were part of Arts AVL's independent planning work to gather input and ideas. They were not official city-led engagement processes. We recognize that this may have created some confusion. We are encouraged by the city's proposed community engagement process and its commitment to inclusive, community-driven input. We want to be clear that this upcoming process is distinct from Arts AVL's earlier outreach and will provide a formal opportunity for broader public participation.
And that info that Katie received from those focus groups was sent to us to help get this started, so it's definitely been helpful for sure.
I think to Katie's point, I don't think it's possible for the city to do all of it. And to your point, it does take ambassadors. It takes, right? So the meeting that we had last week, I'm not sure what meeting you were referencing when you talked about a community engagement that you participated in, Chris. Our goal was to present to the community who did not know about this project the slides that you showed us today and that you showed at the city briefing. And what happened in that meeting, well, first of all, it was supposed to be a community meeting, and we got a lot of press attention that we didn't want, and a lot of calls from city staff and city council about why are we doing this. And really, it's because there's not enough city people to actually do the community work that's needed. And so it does take all of us to do that. And so in that meeting, though, I learned a lot of misinformation, too. And I'm not going to repeat it because I want to rather find out, is it true, right? And so the question is, like, how do we do this better? Because there's already a level of mistrust. People who were against the project coming into the meeting were even more against it after because of information sharing. People who are confused were against it. You're confused when they came in, were against it when they left. I mean, it's really hard to manage. But I don't really have a question other than, you know, a question that we can answer, which is how do we do this better? How do we increase trust amongst ourselves, amongst neighbors, and understanding what our different needs are so we can do this better? I know it's possible, but I don't have the answer to it. But I'm gonna keep doing what I'm doing and deal with the sneers and side comments.
We do all these engagements for projects all the time, so, you know, take each one, learn a little bit more, add to it, and keep going. And the recovery projects have so much engagement going on with them. I feel like the model has changed significantly, and we're able to add on to that and keep adding on to that. And that's the hope and the goal, right? The more we can do and the more engagement we can get, the better it informed.
Well, I do want to see reflected in these reports the, you know, messages from the city, particularly from the block. You know, so some of the concerns that we have around parking, I think it's important to see how do we mitigate that ahead of time and put that into those reports. There's this idea that the Black cultural district that's left in Asheville will disappear as a result of this. And that fear is not being looked at, addressed, as I can tell, or even mentioned. The fact that that land had homes that were owned or occupied by Black families, I don't see that either. We just call it city-occupied land that's adjacent to urban renewal. It's not enough. It's not enough to build trust if we're not telling the whole story. I got a call yesterday that said, oh, City Council has enough votes to make this thing pass. I'm not trying to stop it from passing. I just want us to be cognizant of the history, cognizant of the people who are in that neighborhood doing work right now, along with the city, I might add. And so that's not being reflected, and that saddens me. But there, I think I'm done.
Thank you, Chris. It looks like there's no other questions. Does Katie have anything else? All right. Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for a wonderful engagement. So we're moving into public comment. Do we have any emails, voicemail, comments that have been submitted?
We do not.
Thank you so much, John. Do we have, okay, we don't, we're going to move through there. So our next meeting looks like it'll be May 21st, 2026 at 9 a.m. here at the Asheville City Hall first floor conference room. And at this point, I move to make a motion to an adjournment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We have to roll call it. Sorry, we have somebody on. Right, we have to roll call it real quick?
Yep.
Yeah. We'll start with Alexandria.
Aye.
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 And Katie's aye. Thank you, everybody. I hope you have a fabulous rest of your afternoon.
Thanks.
Or morning, I guess.